together. Of course, and she has relatives and friends that live there. In fact, the ones that are able have left Tehran and moved up north to areas where they could be a little bit safer, but I'm not sure what safer means these days in Iran. This morning there was a press conference, and maybe some of you heard. It was speaking and what talking about the beautiful attack, and the precision, and the excitement behind that, how incredible this attack is, as if the rest of the world had absolutely no agency whatsoever, just the U.S. makes all the decisions. And I'm going to say, I think Iran should retaliate right now, but many different ideas of what should and shouldn't do, but I think our main interest is what should we do here in the United States, prevent all-out wars, never ending wars, this incredible silliness of constantly thinking that war can answer everything. I think one of the things we wanted to touch on is a lot of us are getting news from different sources. I canceled my cable because I cable, and many of the conversations that come out there, if I really want to hear them, you can find them online. So I don't understand the point of that cable television, frankly, other than to see, what's like this toothpaste and cleaning fluids and all that stuff. So it's not a thing for me personally, but I would love to ask, maybe go around and ask people how are they getting their information, because obviously we live in this sort of parallel world these days where people get information from a whole different viewpoint, and if you watch that enough times, you can understand why people think so differently. I was watching Fox News for a while, not during this time, but a couple of weeks ago, and it really, by the end of an hour, and I was able to stand an hour, by an hour, I could begin to understand why people would think the way they do by watching this type of, and of course, a lot of lies, a lot of misinformation, a lot of half-truths, because that's how lies are perpetuated, by telling half-truths that end up being, combined with other little half-truths, make up a whole different paradigm of thinking. So I want to go around anyone who would like to share with us what is their best source of information, because again, if you get information, for instance, I remember during the 1967 war, I was a little kid, and I remember my father was listening to his Zenith radio that had an antenna that went all the way to the ceiling, because he wanted to get the latest news from the most obscure news outlets. So he would start out with the U.S. first, because that was kind of the beginning of it. When the U.S. became kind of weird in their news, he moved to BBC, because that was kind of the next tier. And when BBC became not very good, in his opinion, he moved to Cairo Radio. And of course, Cairo Radio was giving all this bombastic information about how, the Egyptian army is going to prevail. And of course, every time I did that, my father was really excited, started jumping over the house, thinking this is it, that is going to happen, that all of a sudden Palestine will be free. And would you turn on?
Yeah.
So it's interesting, and I would hear the crackle of that now, because it was midnight and he had to hear it, because I think it was maybe like 6 o'clock or 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock, I guess it was in London. So I would hear the crackle. It was like he had to move the radio in different parts of the room in order for him to hear. And I'm saying this because I think he was looking for information he wanted to hear. And every time he did not hear that information, he moved to the next station. So it was fascinating. And then at the end, he ended up just this like ridiculous, obscure radio station somewhere in Egypt that was giving him the information he wanted to hear. And of course, that wasn't true. What was happening was far from what was being told. So I'm saying that in that you can always find information that suits one's paradigm and one's thinking. But there is something that is actually facts, that is actually truth. And I think that's what we are seeking. That's why I think we should look at different perspectives in order for us to gather the information that we need to gather. And the reason for that is to walk in with some kind of knowledge so that when we go to Congress, we go and speak to friends, we go and speak to others, we have some credibility, I guess, in the way that we talk. That doesn't mean that I love hearing stuff that fills my soul. I need that information in order for me to continue going. So I know that sometimes I hear pretty obscure stuff that my father used to listen to, and that was good. It's good enough for me, but I also realize that this is just teeny bit of information that I need to expand my sources in order for me to get the real truth. So anyway, I'm saying this because I put it out there that people can listen to whatever they want to listen to. I'm curious to know what people are listening to so we can, as a collective, try to understand better the truth, where information is coming from. So, Lydia, you want to start?
No, I think we got the answer.
Okay. And if you could introduce yourself, and if you're spying for an organization, please identify the organization you're spying for.
My name is Joy Freeman. I volunteer in my Philippines, and I like Katie Talber and Carol Clemente and these Winters Philippines on YouTube and Instagram. And I also like Judge Volcano and General McGregor and the guy who's the weapons inspectors. Yeah, and on the topic of Palestine and anti-war to Jimmy Dore, knows everything but on Palestine is very good. Oh, sorry. I was saying Katie Helper, Judge Napolitano, Cheryl Clemente, Code Pink Station on Instagram, YouTube, and Jimmy Dore and Issues of Palestine and not non-aggression and I mentioned sorry. Sorry, I'm back. I'm like this. Okay. I have subscriptions to bad fighting case and drop fake news and left time and judging. And I listen to pretty freedom, but I agree with you. I would love to hear from others about how to access the perspective of more effective in that. So, and I do something big happens on CNN and MSNBC for now. Broader range.
Perspective on the situation in Palestine, which can be a relief even. I also watch Al Jazeera all the time.
Different way they go back and forth between so many different outlets. There is some exercise. I know it's on your timer all the time. And then also I have all these things, detail, and recently subscribed, this is not Palestine related, but these two journalists called Migrant Insider. But with that said, it's the also on this trap of having to pay for so many subscriptions, but I don't really see a way around it right now, unfortunately.
My name's Helen, and ever since the beginning of the war on terror, and also all the way back to Iraq, I'm dependent on Democracy Now! I listen to it every morning if I can, and then I started to keep track of all the analysts and the information coming through. Just my favorite.
Hello, I'm Ty Berry. I'm a CCP mole in Washington, D.C. I really, I was thinking this is kind of, I was playing a game or something. I really trust you. Ever since I've known her, she's been right on everything. So, unfortunately, that's where I get most of my reliable information.
I actually, perspective, ILTV, which is an Israeli news channel, often gives you a very good perspective of what the other side is thinking. Yep.
The one station Marjan listens to is Haaretz. She has a subscription to it, and she's always listening to it, and she always tells me that's the best news source that she can find. And this is Faisal, and Faisal is here visiting us from Connecticut. He actually opened up the Palestine Museum in Connecticut, a beautiful museum there, and has recently opened another branch of the Palestine Museum in Scotland, in Edinburgh, Scotland. And his intention is, the plan is to open a Palestine Museum in every city in the world. So it's a big ask, but I'm sure with his abilities he can do it. And yesterday we were talking, and he was listening to Arabic news. So I'd be interested to hear about the sources that you listen to, Faisal.
Thank you, Andy. I appreciate the plug-in here. Before I tell you what I watch, I found Andy's remarks about listening to the radio during the '67 war, because I was 16 years old at the time, and my father would listen to about 20 news forecasts a day. Again, they're all looking for the news they want to hear, but at the time, all the Arabic radio stations were unreliable. They would just put out information that is not true. And the only station that he would listen to and believe what they were saying was the BBC at the time. And it was a different BBC than the one we have now. They actually had good sources of information and reporters. And when during the bombings of Ramallah, when Israel was coming through, we left our house, which was in downtown, and the only thing we took with us was a national Panasonic transistor radio. That was the most important item we took from the house. But if you were a little bit savvy at that time, and you knew how to use shortwave radio on the radio, there was a frequency that was used for telephones, like when you called, if you're an Amman and you wanted to talk to somebody in Cairo, you pick up the phone. What happens, your phone call gets relayed through a shortwave connection, and you could have listened to Nasser and King Hussein discussing what are they going to say about what's going on, and one would say, well, you say, well, we downed 200 airplanes, and you say, well, it was the Americans who were fighting, and this. and you could have heard the whole thing. And you could also listen to the PLO sending instructions to the radio station in Cairo. Of course, Israel was in on that too. So anyway, but things have changed now. It's a lot different. So what I listen to is, I listen to Instagram, and Instagram has an adaptive algorithm. They sense what kind of stuff you listen to, and they keep feeding you that stuff. So make sure your spouse doesn't get hold of your phone and watches your Instagram, because then she'll see everything you're watching. No. Anyway, so they're like stations, like there's something called Al Arabi TV that puts out a message every like 5 minutes that's about 15 seconds long, and it goes on. So you listen to that, you go next, and you get a sampling of about 30, 40 things that are going on at the time. But you have to make sure you got enough diversity by watching things and making Instagram showing to you all the time. But I found Instagram to be the most efficient, because you get to see a lot of things very quickly, and then you could judge like which one is right, which one isn't. And but I found it to be my favorite source.
Any other? This is Megan, by the way, the China person.
Thank you. When it comes to China, I think Breakthrough News, the China Report, does a good job. And I'm also a really big fan of Geopolitical Economy Report with Ben Norton. He lives in Beijing, and he offers just really comprehensive analysis of every situation, a lot including China, but also on other topics. And they often have guest hosts like Michael Hudson, who wrote like Super Imperialism, and a lot of good articles too on the website.
So I know there's a lot of information being passed around. We're recording this, we're not streaming it live. So can we, Wayne, how can people access this afterwards? It'll be available on our YouTube channel. So you can go to the YouTube channel and be able to review it if you need to remember what the information we had. Can you introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Frida. I'm an associate professor in peace and development studies. So I have been studying U.S. foreign policy for 25 years now. I listen to everything, I think, that has been mentioned here. But I don't know if I've heard everything, so I would just like to add Jeffrey Sachs, which I try to find out wherever he speaks. And listen to that. And also Chris Hedges' report is a very good podcast. And Breaking Points is also a podcast that I appreciate very much, because they always try to analyze things from different perspectives. And of course, Jeremy Scarhill and Ryan Grimm is two of the best.
If you could, Frida's from Sweden.
Yeah.
So if we can get a sense of the European perspective, I know Sweden may not be the European perspective, but a little bit of that perspective about what's happening in the Middle East would be really useful for people to hear.
Can we wait for a second?
Yeah.
So we do have a couple of people from, that are Iranian Americans.
Yeah.
Could you tell us where to get your?
We're actually saving them for last.
So I want to hear their news.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we can. I can get back.
About the European perspective.
What's happening right now in the Middle East? Well, the perspective is that, I mean, more or less every country in Europe is complicit now to what is happening, and they accept the American way. And I haven't been able to see every statement now since I woke up this morning, but from Sweden and other Scandinavian countries, they all say that Israel has the right to defend itself, and that they support more or less the bombing now, but they want new negotiations.
What about the people?
The people?
The people. I mean, here in the United States, people are pretty split about what's happening.
They are split. And I mean, Instagram and all other kinds of social media, of course, gather people now to try to make their voices heard to the governments. There are protests every week in Stockholm, for example, which gather at least some thousands of people protesting against the bombing of Gaza. But it's really difficult to say because everyone who speaks out get ridiculed or silenced, and the mainstream media doesn't raise more or less any critical voices. So it's a very difficult situation to try to oppose the wars.
So I want to turn to you, if you don't mind, Leila. You just got back from Iran about 3 months ago. 3 weeks ago. Wow. Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about what's happening in Iran during the time you were there? I know the sanctions have been very, very difficult for people, obviously, but just tell us a little bit of that, and do you get in touch with family right now and what's happening with them?
Good morning, everyone. It's good to see all of you here. So I was in Iran, and the only thing I could see, it was resilience and happiness. Although the sanction is really making a difficult time for Iranians, but in being there and see all of those beauties and the beautiful history, you know, Iran has almost 30 of the UNESCO sites, and I really am worried about those sites as well. That belongs to all of us, not just Iranians, the historical sites. And so being in Iran for a couple of months made me to think I want to go there and live there, because the life was so meaningful and I wanted to be there. But right now, Tehran, the city that I was born, is kind of empty. Many people left the town. The city of 12 million people live in Tehran. And when I came back 3 weeks ago, my parents went over there. We have an apartment there, so all of us share. So when I came back, my parents went over there in Tehran. So now, of course, they left Tehran. They are elderly, so we ask our friends to take them to another city, which is very close to Isfahan right now. So the internet was shut down in the past couple of days. We couldn't contact to any Iranians who live there. Yesterday, the internet got connected, and we got in touch with many people. I am mostly with the Iranian news. I follow all the news over there, and also through Clubhouse. Is an application that Iranians come over there, they review the news. I was there, and many Iranians came back there after a week not being there because the internet was shut off. And the reason for internet was shut off because there are a lot of spies, Israeli spies, that they used the internet for communication, for attacking different areas with drones. And so they shut off the internet to make them not to be able to do that, to continue that. So my Iranian friends, and so they are in a Clubhouse, they are very worried. At the same time, almost everyone shouting in Iran and asking for the nuclear bomb. They said, we need to have a nuclear bomb. That is some kind of scary, but at the same time, they are saying why there was no attack to North Korea and it was an attack on Iran. People are very angry at the United States. And there are a lot of anti-US and anti-Israeli sentiments right now in Iran. Here, I follow the news constantly from my Twitter. I follow Twitter, and there are a couple of people who I follow very closely. Trita Parsi and is one of them. Negar Murtazavi, and she has a podcast on Iran. And my friend Kosar can explain a little bit more on that. And there are a couple of other people who I follow constantly. Besides, they related to America and what is going on in America, I follow the Democracy Now!, Judging Freedom, a couple of people whom are mentioned here. But right now, I have a nauseous feeling. My heart pumped so fast, and I don't want to see my childhood to be destroyed, like what happened to Iraq. We have in our neighborhood, we have Iraq and Afghanistan, and so we need to do something. I'm good.
I
Go.
want to ask you, just maybe the two of you a little bit, is the sentiment of the people in Iran, you said that a lot of them are very anti-US, anti-Israel, anti-intervention right now. We're also hearing that there are others who don't feel that way. What do you think is I mean, we had a demonstration out here
Yeah.
the other day when we had, Negar and Nayak and other folks here. And they were like saying, no, most Iranians want to see change, they want to get rid of the government, and they're willing to let anybody come in and attack the United States, Iran, to be able to bring about the change. What is the sense you have, and how significant is the voices of those folks compared to the ones that don't want this?
And I haven't done any research, but this is my personal observation. Majority of these voices you hear, they belong to people who are outside Iran, not inside. They are people who support the royalists or Mujahideen, MEK. It's a terrorist organization. They are supporters of those. Inside Iran, people even like me, my family, we always wanted to see a change. And there have been democratic movements in Iran who made the change. There are very complicated cultural things that they have been changed, like mandatory hijab, for instance. When I was in Iran last, for a couple of months, the only person who had hijab, probably it was me, because I was scared. But it was very free, and there was a huge movement within the country non-violently, and it was very successful. I really enjoyed looking at those. But right now, I would say even people like me, people who have been damaged by the Iranian government in the past 30, 40 years, they all are around the flag. And they don't want to see any foreigners to come. That's I think for any country. We call it as an inside fight, it's family fight. If we are against against our government, we want to make the change ourselves, not rather a foreign country comes, bomb us, and make a change. That doesn't work in Iran. Iranians are, I would say I watched a couple of interviews online by the Iranian people. It was a guy who said, because, going to the, serving the country is mandatory for 2 years in Iran. A lot of young people came and said, I want to go back to war, if there is any war. Even people who, from their, how do they look? You can see they are not pro-government. But people are around the flag, and these things that you hear outside, like here, they shouted at me also, and they call me supporter of the Islamic Republic, which I'm not, but I'm supporter of Iran as a nation, as an old nation with a 92 million population. I don't want to see anything happen to those people, but people are not supporting the foreign involvement, and I would say even people who openly criticize the government. People from within the prison, political prisoners, they are sending letters outside, and they are asking for not the involvement, they are supporting the Iranian government. And these are, I don't know if I answered your question, maybe on this regard Kausar can answer, because her family are very politically involved as well. Kausar is my old friend.
Sorry, what was the question? I'm lost.
Where do you get your news from as an Iranian that you think is reliable, considering what's happening today? What is the sentiment of people in Iran, and what's the way forward for them?
Sure. My name is Kosa, and I live in North Bethesda. I was born in the U.S., but I grew up in Iran mostly. And since 2003, I've been living in Montgomery County. I get my news mostly from Telegram and WhatsApp groups. And then do different things to verify whether the information is accurate or not, including calling to friends or connections inside Iran. I think the impression I got through the conversation I had, especially this morning, definitely the resilience is there. In fact, Tehran, I just had a different basically observation. Some of my family members had left Tehran, had gone to other towns, but many of them have returned to Tehran during the last few days. And life goes on as usual. Not sure if the basically fear is there, fear of escalation of the full-scale war, but definitely hasn't really impacted the usual, the pace of life. Life goes on again as usual. I think Iranian government, again, these are my take. I'm talking from my own experience and my own observation, and through the conversation I had with people I knew in Iran. There was a very deep division between government and the people. It was partly restored after the election of Pezeshkian as a president, and then there was a shift in terms of the strategy or policies. The Supreme Leader. The Supreme Leader was really came behind Pezeshkian and supported him throughout this last year. So there was a bit of a change, and this trust between the government and public somewhat was restored, but I wouldn't say completely. I think after this Israeli strike, people obviously were trying to see where they can stand in terms of people who were critical of the government, which, I mean, there's a big population of Iranians who are critical of the government. However, in terms of not wanting the foreign intervention or, especially Israeli intervention, I think there was a solidarity among Iranian public. The sentiment you would get from the people inside Iran was completely 180-degree different from what you get from people here, like the people you described came here last week. I think I was speaking to a political activist this morning, and she was saying that this actually maybe if you want to look at the glass half full, brought an opportunity for the government to restore its relationship with the public and focus on building trust. So we don't know where this is going, but it's a struggle that the Iranian government is facing and will face. I don't know if I answered your question. Yeah. One more thing that I wanted to say. Again, there's a heated debate going on right now whether Iran should prevent this tension be escalated and turn into a full-scale war. There are definitely people among politicians that want the Strait of Hormuz be closed, U.S. sites in Gulf countries be attacked. People have been radicalized. I hear a lot of sentiments from Iranian, both inside and outside the country, that definitely weren't supporting this position, but now they say Iran should develop a nuclear bomb. Again, it's too early to say where this is going, but this, I think, has been a result of basically putting too much trust in the U.S. administration, and now Iranians feel betrayed. The last thing I wanted to say, that has been my struggle, and I wanted your advice on that. So I think my concern is not getting into a full-scale war. In fact, we are already in war. I think sanctions, what I saw, what the sanctions did to my family, people lost their lives because not having access to medicine. The sense of desperation, basically, especially economic desperation. I think we're already in war. And I don't want to exaggerate the fear of people that are getting into full-scale war, but, and I don't think I need to do that, but I just don't want to get the attention of the media or activists by saying, oh, this might turn into, because again, we're already in war. I just want to bring your attention that the status quo might stay the same, but it's bad. I don't want this to go on like this. Yeah, that's all I have to say.
So you mentioned that a lot of people in Iran are, or the government is reestablishing trust through this process of what's happening. On the other side of that, I mean, oftentimes when that happens, people blame their own government for making bad decisions.
Mm-hmm.
We heard some of those comments when we were here, when we heard Nayak speaking, making bad decisions that brought us to this point, that they could have been a better way to get here. And also, I think the other point I wanted to make is that oftentimes when a country is under attack, as Iran is constantly under attack, prior to this, I mean, they had bases all around. We have leaders from this country, from Israel and others saying, we're going to take this out, we're going to take this person out. I mean, like a lot of really aggressive and violent gestures toward Iran. Oftentimes that creates more lockdowns, more, draconian methods to maintain a law and order within the country. But you're saying that's not really bound to happen. What would happen is more kind of united the country, as opposed to creating more pressure on people.
Yes. So my husband he told me last night that his classmates in Iran actually volunteered to join this what is Basij, like local militia, to basically search cars. This local militia called Basij was very, very, very unpopular because of the things that again the things that they implemented in Iranian society for the last 40 years or so. But people actually joined that force and then searched the cars. So that indicates that people sort of rethinking their relationship with like military forces, or
What do you say the militia?
So after the Iranian Revolution, again, I'm not very knowledgeable about this, but there was an army. Shah had the army, but after the Iranian Revolution, I think, if I'm not mistaken, 2 additional forces were established. One was IRGC, that was in charge of basically same task as army, basically defending Iranian borders and dealing with foreign threat. There was a local, basically internal force was established called Basij, that were in charge of identifying the infiltrators and versus basically people who wanted to do sabotage internally. However, this force was I think became a point of weakness for the government because of the way that they did things. Lots of corruption, lots of abuse of power. It's a long story. However, and then they had a lot of funding, and they were based in mosques, they were based in universities, and if you would join them, you would get a lot of government benefits. So it became like a sort of a joke if somebody had joined those forces. But during the last week, interestingly, I heard that people had joined that to basically, as a local volunteer, to help them basically manage all the. There were lots of sabotage, bombing simultaneously happened inside cities in Iran while the bombardment was happening, and many actually casualties happened because of those basically bombings. So again, it seemed to me that they're trying to sort of broaden their view and then work on this trust that has been established between the people and yeah.
We were reading about spies all over Iran, and the drones were being flown from inside and so on. Yes.
translate. Like, I remember watching a documentary on a Shah of Iran, and like right before he was deposed by the U.S., he was like criticizing the Zionist influence in media and how his country deserved more money for the oil, and I just see okay, and then he's deposed after that, which seems to be a pattern. And then, I see a disconnect with the stance that he was starting to take, and then I'm reading that his son is trying to come in on the U.S. side, which it seemed like his father was criticizing from the documentaries I saw. Can you explain that disconnect? Because it seemed like what the U.S. did caused the family a lot of, I'm not advocating for the Shah, but it seemed like he was trying to draw some red lines, and how his son is now coming back on. It's not a short answer. Sorry.
Okay, yes, I've seen that interview. I don't know what year you did that interview with Mike Wallace. Again, I'm not sure how much of his basically policies or views were really were in line with what he said during that interview. However, Mossad actually worked closely with Iranian intelligence service called Savak and trained Savak how to basically quash and suppress Iranian dissidents. They had a very close ties together. In fact, on those years, I think Iran was the closest ally of Israel in the region.
I think it was 1973, if I'm not mistaken, around that time. Yes.
I have a question for our Iranian friends. Over the days, now I might be proven really wrong on this, but over the days that I've been watching this whole thing come along, it seems to me that Iran was making threats that it had no business making. Things like, we're going to take out American military bases. I don't think they got an answer for that. They shouldn't have said it in the first place. Things like, we're not afraid of the Zionist entity. I think it would have been, and this is only my opinion, and I really want to hear from you. Do you feel that same way? Like Iran should have been more like appealing to the world community? We're a sovereign nation. We don't have the forces enough to deal with this. The world community should come together. We have nothing to hide. Or should it have been the rhetoric way?
Really tight.
I think Iran has done that, a lot of talks on, because they participated in negotiations. They were on the negotiation table when Israel attacked Iran. And then again, they were on the negotiation table with the E3, 3 European countries, when last night United States, dropped the bomb over there. So, and they have said that many times, that we are going to continue these negotiations, diplomacy, we never leave the table. But at the same time, for domestic, they need to say, yeah, we have the power also. If they attack us, they didn't say we are going to take over the bases. They said the US bases are around us and we can harm them as well. When, it's definitely, it's open for everyone that, Iran doesn't have as powerful as military as the United States or Israel, and it doesn't have a nuclear, first of all. And then some people have said that, but mainly from the Iranian leadership, from the foreign ministry, they always say we are open to diplomacy, we are open to continue our negotiations. Do you want to say something?
Okay, there are many voices coming from Iran, but I think the Iranian leadership is not in that territory. They haven't made unrealistic threats or things like that.
I'm not talking about right now. I'm talking about over the last.
Yeah. So there are so many agencies, and even the military is divided to, I think, 3 different forces. But again, the leadership, the supreme leader or the cabinet, the government, I think they sort of stayed within the basically norms, the international norms. They haven't made like crazy threats like that.
But also, you know, many people have said that Iran is a terrorist state. Iran, you know, threatened the United States or Israel that they are going to wipe off the Israel from the map. These are kind of tit for tat in the conversations that they have, because we have heard it from American, you know, officials or Israelis that they are going to obliterate Iran, and they have, you know, tried a couple of times that we are going to destroy Iran, and we see that they started out. But I think many of them are just in talks because they want to say, we also can do that. If you are going to obliterate Iran, we are going to destroy your country. But meanwhile, I would say right now, unfortunately, since last night when I followed the news this morning among Iranian society, many of them are angry. And many of them are repeating that we should destroy Israel, we should destroy this and that. And for many of you who probably follow the Iranian news or visited Iran, media can say that, you know, from the first, you can say that from your first experience, in first-hand experience, to say, when we went to Iran many times and we say, oh, you hate Israel, and many people say, no, why? Why should hate Israel? Why should we, be enemy with Israel? But now it's opposite, and I think this is not good for the people who, in the past 200 years, never attack any other countries. It's not good for the people who, attacking other countries is not in their mentality, and they are thinking, why should we do that? But I hear that from the Iranian in the streets. That is scary to me, that we are not this. We shouldn't do that. But I should say, especially since last night, they are saying our pride is hurt, and we should do something.
I mean,
Just clarify.
I heard.
I wasn't saying, those things like Dr. Dinajad said about Israel. I'm talking about military might. Iran has always said it can destroy U.S. bases, it can do this, it can do that.
And what I've seen is, I'm hoping that Iran has something up its sleeve, but I don't see it coming out yet.
No, because the military budget for Iran, the budget is really, really small compared to the United States. It's nothing compared to Israel and Saudi Arabia both together, which Saudi Arabia also it's the opposite side of Iran. So it's nothing basically. The military budget is small. Iran has a big population, it's a big country, and its geopolitics of the country is very crucial. Other than that, it doesn't have much military powers.
Yeah, I was listening to Arakchi speaking, and he's incredible. I mean, he's really, really a very, very solid statesman. And I listened to him, and then I listened to Marco Rubio and people like that. It just makes you cringe that we call these people statespeople, and yet, they are so much more sophisticated than anything that we have in our cabinet here in this country. I want to have him, and then I'll go to you. I'm sorry. Let me go to Faisal, and then you, Medea.
This may be controversial here, but I think the mistake that Iran made is that they allow an opportunity to slip from their hands. Israel was threatening to hit Iran. They were in a position to conduct a preemptive strike with maximum force, that they could have taken Israel out in one shot. At the end of the day, it's going to be the same result. Iran is going to get hit, it's going to get destroyed, because Israel wants to do that. And by allowing Israel to take the first strike, kill half their leaders, and destroy a lot of their facilities, they reduce their ability to conduct that massive strike. That massive strike could have taken Israel out of business, and they missed that opportunity.
No.
So I think we should move into the part where we talk about what we're going to do. And before we go into that, I want to recognize that this was done so spontaneously last night that we didn't have a chance to get in the room some of the people who are working with organizations that have the ability to mobilize or have the kind of analysis that we want. We talked about our news, where we get our news from, but maybe we could just spend a couple of minutes also saying some of the organizations that we are looking towards, at least from the putting out their analysis and their what you can do from your home kind of thing. So I think NIAC is an organization that we all should be looking towards because the National Iranian American Council. And we should be supporting them. They have been attacked by right-wing Iranian American groups for a long time now, but Zionist groups, and they've held steady and really had a long-term trajectory of trying to have a U.S. policy that recognizes the sovereignty of Iran, to lift the sanctions, to let the Iranian people determine who their own government is. So that's NIAC. Kate, do you want to say some of the organizations, including your own, that... Here.
Push the button.
Oh, do you want to come up here? There you go. Well, here, she can do it. Go ahead.
All right. All right. Thanks, Medea. And hi, everyone. My name is Kate Alexander. I'm the Policy and Campaigns Officer at Madre. We're a global feminist fund and human rights advocacy organization. I'm here in my personal capacity, though, as someone who's been an anti-war organizer with Peace Action New York State and the International Peace Bureau for over a decade now. I think I just want to completely agree, NIAC, and I think particularly importantly because they've been such an active voice in the movement to free Palestine. They are such extraordinary advocates who have really, really shown up regionally against U.S. aggression, and that gives them so much more credibility now to say, like, we have to repay that favor. In addition, I would say that I really appreciate Friends Committee on National Legislation. You know, I think that the Ceasefire Now space, Friends Committee on National Legislation, I think that they have always had a reputation in DC for punching above their weight. And I really appreciate how they've organized us, particularly amongst the DC grasstops lobbying community, to show up day after day with consistent messages and to know who to target. Andy, you had asked before, like, who do you listen to? And it was with this emphasis that I don't want to miss on what do you say when you get into a room to have credibility? And one of the things that FCNL does so well is, like, follow exactly what your representatives are saying so that you know what the starting point is in that office. So you can rebut bad arguments, you can champion them when they're saying something that makes sense, and then apply it to the argument that you want them to make and the actions you need from them. For that reason, I would say right now, Senator Kane's office is really important to pay attention to. They introduced a war powers resolution. It will be voted on Thursday, unless, I think that's as soon as it can be. On Friday, okay.
Is it still useful?
Yeah, it's extraordinarily useful, especially right, in this moment before Iran retaliates against you. Like, I feel like, Iran retaliates on U.S. sites. I feel like it's extraordinarily powerful to pass the war powers resolution right now. It is the most important deterrence tool we have in this country to say we do not support war with Iran. And frankly, I hope it passes the Senate. I want it to pass unanimously. And I would say the last one I want to recognize, besides Code Pink, of course, is Action Corps, is a group that I really admire because they have organized activists in their communities wherever they are to oppose U.S. aggression. They come from a background actually out of Oxfam. They got too political for their parent organization, so they branched off. But what I really appreciate about them, and also a little bit of Oxfam because they've gotten more political, particularly since Yemen, is they let you make the argument that makes the most sense for you. I don't know about all of you, but anytime for me when the U.S. is being aggressive in the region, I always think about growing up playing soccer and the kids on soccer fields who could be your neighbors or friends or classmates, and how the wars will always impact them more than they impact the politicians, every time. And so I really appreciate Action Corps for giving everyone, regardless of their background, an opportunity to say war is wrong.
Yeah.
Sending the wrong message to say that we want a War Powers Act since we already are in war. I mean, it makes it sound like this wasn't really war. This was just a little bombing here and there. How does that play out? How does the War Powers Act change the fact that we can bomb these countries from 20,000 feet above the air?
Well, the War Powers Act says that we can't without congressional approval, and so that what Trump did was illegal according to our Constitution, and that if he continues, because we know, even though he says, no, that was it, we just did that bombing, that's not.
Doesn't he have the right to do that if he thinks there's an imminent danger?
Yeah, but imminent danger has to be defined, and he can't define this as an imminent danger. It just doesn't. No, it doesn't pass the smell test. So,
now we're using smell tests.
well, you know what? It's really important that Congress weigh in on this. Even better than the War Powers Act on the Senate side is Bernie Sanders' resolution, because that is not about procedure. That's just about saying we shouldn't be supporting Israel's war on Iran.
Where's that stand right now?
Well, he has introduced it and he's gathering support, but he doesn't have any Republican supporters. And this is an issue I want us to talk about. I don't know, did you want to finish up anything you wanted to say? Well, let's let Kate finish.
No, I think just on the point of War Powers Resolution, there's 2 points I want to make. One is, historically, what I think is so important about War Powers Resolution is that it's a legacy of the Vietnam War protests, that it was passed during the Vietnam War specifically for instances like this where there has been too much executive overreach and Congress can pull back the reins. And that's exactly what we need it for right now. The other piece that's so important about the War Powers Resolution is the fact that it's privileged, so it will get a vote. So to the point of how you build legislative strategy, if we get Republicans on the War Powers Resolution, that creates a really, really good base for us to get them on to Bernie's bill. And the War Powers Resolution is also this time-limited opportunity for us to use the arguments that we need to make now. But it also is really challenging, because one thing that happens with War Powers Resolutions over time again and again is that there's an overemphasis on the process argument, that the reason the war is wrong is because it's been unauthorized by Congress. But that doesn't mean that that's the only argument that we have to make, particularly as progressives. We are allowed and encouraged and should absolutely be screaming from the rooftops, we oppose war because our lives are not disposable to the whims of billionaires and people who will never lose anything to these conflicts. And last week I was at an action protesting the military parade with progressive anti-war veterans who have the exact same message as Iranians in this moment, which is, we are not pawns for you. And I think that is the thing that we have to drive home now, that war, it's not just wrong because it's unconstitutional, it's wrong. It's actually, in the post 9/11 era, it's like the stupidest foreign policy to think that war solves anything. That is the policy that's naive. The people who support peace and diplomacy are actually on the side of what works for sustainable security for the long run. And that is the argument that we have to make over and over again now, that war is extraordinarily naive, it's self-defeating, it scares the shit out of people and makes them so that they are radicalized to more emergent, like, military factions in their communities because they feel like they have to be to defend themselves. And that is so, like, relatable. At a fundamentally human level, that is so relatable. And so what we have to say is, like, war is bad policy. It's stupid policy. It's naive policy. And it's not good for anyone's security at all. And the War Powers Resolution gives us an opportunity to, socialize those arguments in a time-sensitive way on a matter that has captured the attention of everyone in this country and everyone in the world. And B, it gives us a clear organizing tool to build towards better foreign policy in the long run, and get people onto the war powers now who may be able to sign on to Sanders and other foreign policy tools later on.
Great, thank you. So there's on the House side, we have Tom Massey as the Republican, the sole Republican who's come out, and Ro Khanna, and they have introduced what would be the equivalent. It's a different procedural thing. It's called a concurrent resolution, but that's on the House side, and that has about 30 members signed up to it so far, but only Democrats, except for Tom Massey. So I don't want us to get fixated or too focused on the congressional stuff. There's some people here who do go around in Congress with us, and we need to do a lot more of that. I wonder if we could first look at the bigger picture. Yeah, Helen.
I think that if some big organization that has a lot of credibility put out the message that every single person who went to a No Kings rally last week should call their senators and congresspeople every single day from now until this is over. I'm sick and tired of all these people who come out for rallies but they don't do anything. When those voices can be so powerful as we go into Congress, if they're getting called.
Absolutely. I think what you're saying is critical. Also because those No King rallies, and there were over 1,000 of them, they didn't deal with the issue of Palestine, they didn't deal with Israel, and of course they didn't deal with Iran. And that was a huge mistake. I think it's a terrible thing that you talk about resistance to Trump and you don't talk about resistance to his foreign policy. But now, I just looked it up, Indivisible is saying, call Congress and tell them no war with Iran. Our Revolution, which is also a large organization, is saying call Congress, tell them no war with Iran. I think we have to contact those organizations and ask them to, what can we do? I mean, now is the time to form a coalition. We should have done it a long time ago with respect to Palestine and Gaza, but I think we really need to do it now and get some of these big organizations that weren't ready to say no to genocide in the last 20 months, but are now recognizing that this is the time to come out for no war. So that's one sector, and we can talk about anybody. I mean, there's Indivisible, there's Our Revolution, what are some of the other there's Move On. So if anybody wants to look up right now and see what Move On has put out, that would be good, but it's probably about the time that Move On would come out as anti-war. And any other of those big sort of Democrat-connected organizations that you would recommend we get in touch with? Yeah, I mean, they would be on the next level, I think, of the more radical groups. I think we can hold off on Black Voices for Peace. I'm talking about any of the other big ones. So Move On, Indivisible, Our Revolution. And if you didn't hear, Bernie Sanders was at a rally yesterday when the news broke, and he was really, really good on this. So, there's those organizations that have an ability to mobilize. What about that new one that's called 5051? Is anybody follow them? So they came out as soon as Trump was elected and started organizing. So that's another organization that has ability to mobilize. So Move On has keep the U.S. out of war with Iran, so that's good.
What about the climate folks, like Climate Defiance and people like that?
We won their smaller groups, but yes, we should be in touch with them. If somebody want to look up what 350.org is saying about Iran, yeah, 5051 is a more like resist Trump one. And then, I mean, there's the big environmental groups like Sierra Club, but they haven't come out against war. It's hard to get them to do anything.
He went to Israel.
Yeah. Sunrise would be a good one. Could somebody look up and see if Sunrise has come out? Laura? UNAC is quite small at this point, but we know they come out against war. I think that would be in the next level of the anti-war groups. I'm talking about groups that aren't anti-war in their essence, but are big and can mobilize. How about the what? CAIR is, the Council on American Islamic Relations. It's a very big organization. Can somebody else look up what they have put out? 350 has nothing, so we need to get 350 to say something. Wait, 1 second. Like NAACP, kind of? Uh-huh.
They should really be pushed back, NAACP and the Black Congressional Congress. They don't come out as quickly as they should, but they should, but they do eventually, and they should be pushed to come out sooner because they have legal defense and they're supposed to be humanitarian and civil rights.
Yeah.
So NAACP and Black Congressional Caucus, and then the other, some of the other civil rights legal organizations.
ACLU, you said? Yeah. What about unions? Yeah.
I was going to say the unions.
All right, so we have to contact our friend Gene Breskin and ask him what's going on around the unions.
What about the candidates that are running for the midterm election? Should we hold them to be anti-war candidates? And if such, we would support them. Isn't that something that...
Yeah, let's hold off on the candidates and the people in office now for a second, just to finish up on some of these. Now, in terms of the unions, there are about 5 pretty big unions that came out around Palestine. We have to see if they would come out on Iran. Any other of these? Yeah.
Some of them were evangelical who wrote the letter. I think it was in New York Times.
Oh, right.
Coalition.
Yeah, that's a good idea. There were like 1,000.
Yes,
Yeah.
they should be
1,000 black
come
preachers.
up against this.
Yeah.
They can preach it to their church because unfortunately, there's a lot of evangelicals preaching for these
Absolutely.
black and brown people.
Absolutely.
Those black preachers who wrote that letter preach against this.
Excellent. Any other big church? Well, of course, the big, the Methodists, the Presbyterians, I mean, all of these big groups. Cole, you have any suggestions?
Christians for a Free Palestine Christians for a Free Palestine, I think, is the best, most active.
But that's a small group.
Yes, but we want to grow it.
Yeah.
So if you know Christians who are concerned about these issues, we need to build up their membership because they're doing the most effective, and they are. Yeah, I mean, if you know somebody's denomination, then you can connect them with the particular denomination group that's working on these issues. But
yeah, Ty, you want to say something about the religious groups?
No, I was just going to say I've seen in the media, different medias, but accusing the far-right evangelicals as pushing more along with Netanyahu to get Trump over the edge to commit this horrific act. So I heard that.
Just have a question. For people who follow all the sites online, has any group been proposing a big rally like the No Kings? Has anybody, it's very early, it's not even 24 hours, but have any groups been mentioning the fact that they're organizing rallies right now?
So I think we need some huge rally, and we need some of these big groups to help call it. There's a rally today at 2 o'clock in front of the White House, but we need some of these big organizations that will be putting the word out. So I think it's important after this that we contact some of the big organizations that did things like the No Kings. Yeah, it happened. It was kind of quick in front of the Washington Post, and then it went to the White House. And, it was a small rally, and we'll see this afternoon who comes out. We need big rally.
The BFW festival might be an opportunity
to recruit people. Now, I want you all to... Yeah.
Go ahead, Shlomo. So, PDA, Progressive Democrats of America. I would contact Alan Minsky, who is managing it. There are hundreds of people there, at least, if not thousands. So again, PDA is one. One more comment is that nobody mentioned the possibility of World War III, which will be nuclear.
Because we don't want to go there, Shlomo.
And this is very crucial. I would come with pictures, if I have a demonstration, pictures of Hiroshima after the bomb. And this may be the DC area at some point. So we need to also pay attention to nuclear war. That is also a huge risk now. We are in a very dangerous moment in history.
Great, thank you. I just also want to say in terms of this mobilizing, I want you to think for a moment that every group that we mentioned here, every group would be more aligned with the Democratic Party than the Republican. And let's face it, who has power right now? It is Republicans. So,
the military contractors.
yeah, but people that have access in terms of people power, it's going to be people who are more on the Republican side of things. So I want us to think for a moment, and I don't know how much you have been following this tremendous split within the MAGA movement and how important it is. And so many of the influencers that have huge shows, whether it's Tucker Carlson or what? Candace Owens. Matt Gaetz has been speaking out. What's the other one you said? I can't hear you. Oh, Steve Bannon, which is amazing. Yeah, Occupy Peace. This guy, Dave Smith, who's a libertarian that has a huge following. So we need to make a list of these, and I've been listening to more and more of them, and it is quite remarkable. Now, we don't know after the latest strikes what they're saying, because they might back off a little bit, thinking that, oh yes, this was a good thing, show of strength, and now Trump is going to back off. So anyway, we've got to see where those groups are. But I want to just see a show of hands here. How many of you would feel comfortable going to a rally that was put on by both a coalition of left and right groups?
Oh, we said, remember the past.
How many of you would feel uncomfortable knowing that some of these groups are anti-immigrant, some of these groups you might consider racist? So, Jan, you're the only one. Claire, a little bit. Nader, you wanna say something about this?
Yeah. I mean, of course, I think a lot of us would feel uncomfortable, but it's you know, I think it's a matter of trying to get the word out and being effective on that point. But yeah, I mean, I would gladly be a part of it, but I would be uncomfortable, of course. Yeah.
Here, wait 1 second, here you go.
Spent a lot of time campaigning for Bernie Sanders and went out state and did all of that both times. You learned how to, because the point was getting people to coalesce around the issues that we do agree on, you know, and so it's just sort of thinking that through and being ready for it and turning back to the things that you do agree on all the time. Anyway.
So we have asked Marjorie Taylor Greene if she would convene a group of the left and the right to just talk. This was a couple of weeks ago. Talk about these issues, and she was open to it. But I think now it's absolutely essential, and it might not be that, you know, she wants to be convening a protest, but at least convening groups in either her office or Bernie's office, because Bernie has done it before. He did it around Yemen. We need one of them to convene some of the major groups in the left and the right. Now, I don't see, and I'd like to see, has anybody heard, like, Marjorie Taylor Greene as of after the strikes yesterday? Because, you know, there is a fear that they might step back, huh?
Pray for peace. She tweeted.
Pray for peace after the strikes? So any other comments on this issue of left and right?
I'd just like to remind everybody, I don't know if anybody remembers the Jimmy Dore protest or whatever that was on the Lincoln Memorial. There's a lot of peer pressure behind when Medea was asked to speak there, and this was a good thing, this left and right convergence. She was pilloried and she couldn't speak. She went with her mouth taped because even Code Pink couldn't allow. So these are the kind of peer pressures that you're going to feel if you do left-right convergence. But we've got to steel up to that because it's the only way out of this mess, in my opinion.
I think we have Cole and Kate and then.
So about going to rallies with people who you don't agree with everything. I mean, that happens with every single rally we go to. Also, rallies aren't, unless it's absolutely enormous, which we have no potential for that happening in the near future. I think it's more effective to go to the smaller little rallies and actually make connections. We need to be making connections with people who are on the fence, who haven't seen a direct way to get involved with the peace movement, because we have to help them like overcome the propaganda. They need to, like, peace people have been dehumanized in our own country. Like, they see us as terrorists or terrorist supporters. So I really encourage, and I've done this myself, some of us in Montgomery County, go to those, like the No Kings rally, wearing a keffiyeh, so you're still like representing your values, and you will find those people who are ready to potentially like come to Code Pink or join a group locally. But we have to like actually be organizing and building for longer term, and we have to like continue to grow our membership, and just mobilizing a rally doesn't actually get us anywhere.
No, except if it's an emergency like now, and if you could get some of the big groups to call for it.
But still, it's not going, we've had huge rallies, so it has to be something more than that. So there has to be like a way of like bringing people in long-term, not just showing up at the White House where no matter how many people are there, they are not going to change their mind. But if you are with a smaller group, you're building our membership so that we can be having more effective influence on the politics.
Okay, we have a bunch of other hands raised. Mike?
Yeah, just for my clarification, during this urgent period that we're referring to right now, is our ask limited to Iran, or is it Iran and the Palestinians?
Good question. I mean, I think our ask should be no U.S. Military action on Iran, no support for Israel's actions on Iran, and no military support for Israel, period, which brings in the issue of Gaza.
Marjorie and Alexander Cortez are having a...
Oh, really? What's the difference of opinion?
Well, I mean, Alexander Cortez writes, the president's disastrous decision to bomb Iran without authorization is a grave violation of the Constitution and congressional oversight. And Marjorie Taylor Greene responds, shut up, you pathetic little hypocrite. You fully supported our military and intervention running the proxy war against Russia and Ukraine, and you voted to fund Ukraine war under president with dementia. You don't get to play anti-war and more outrage anymore.
I don't see them coming together to organize a rally. Touche is right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so just for context and to kind of like share, I was the mobilizations manager at Move On under the first Trump administration.
Wait, you were what?
The mobilizations manager at Move On under the first Trump administration. And so I have a lot to say about mobilizations.
Against you, or maybe we...
No, I mean, honestly, fair, so fair. But that was the last time they really mobilized around no war with Iran. And there's so much to say on this topic, but on the topic of like left, right, doing a rally together, I think it depends on who's platformed. I think that there are like this is a really, really difficult moment to mobilize together when there are ICE raids against the communities that are in the diaspora we are trying to organize with. And so what I would say like first and foremost is I'm more interested in getting our own like politics in order and building power so that the right has to come to us, as opposed to starting with them at the beginning and potentially like I feel like with the right, one of the challenges that's come out is that the process argument has become so loud, and the human rights argument, to your point, has like completely lost credibility with the US audiences. It's so rare that humanitarians or human rights advocates are taken seriously in this country. And so I'm really interested in like what would it take for Move On and Indivisible to like do more than post a tweet and do the rapid response protests and the calls and do the letters to the editor packages that we used to see all of the time in moments like this, and then like building power for the human rights argument before trying to combine it, or like letting the audiences speak to their own bases separately and then coming together after the fact. Because I think that we have to be really, really clear that people are organizing in two different theories of change all the time. And like, I think there are people who are organizing in what's politically possible right now, which is actually doing some work to like try to minimize harm with Republicans who are being anti-war in this moment. And trying to get them on like more conservative platforms to speak to their base in this moment. And there are people who are operating in the term of how do we expand what's politically possible in the future. And these groups are often pitted against each other, but we have the same like goals if we're values aligned for building a world where this kind of strike on Iran is not possible. And so if we have an opportunity now, in order to like merge those two strategies, I think it's much more about like who are we platforming, and are we having the right messengers in front of the right audiences, as opposed to trying to bring the wrong messenger to an audience that is like going to not hear them. And also with like a lot of safety considerations of what an ICE raid would look like out of nowhere with Iran protests. Like I think that's a real consideration right now.
I think we have 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
Wait.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Here?
Yeah.
Yeah?
So I just wanted to say, after all these years of covering protests and large protests, I've always wondered why, whenever there's a protest in front of, let's say, the Israeli embassy where nobody sees it, and the embassy's closed on a weekend, and I wonder, why are you here? And I've always, no one's watching. And, so I've always thought that maybe just smaller groups, 3 to 5 people, in front of their local, the local office of the representative in their districts would be more effective when somebody's coming by with a grocery cart wondering why these people are holding a banner there once a week, cause people to just stop for a moment and ask, what the hell are you doing here every week? And maybe even get more local news coverage. And I think if there was a way that, we could encourage that, maybe help people along with where are those local district offices. And, like what you do at the Capitol building, right? It means so much because you're asking the questions, even though you're not getting the answers, but the viewer is actually understanding what the question is. And it's the same thing, like when I'm at the State Department and we ask a question, everybody's asking me, why the hell do you go there? Because they never answer you. I said, because it's the question that I want you to hear. I want you to contemplate the question, and I think we need to do more of that. And more interaction where the viewer on social media or wherever they see it can contemplate what we're talking about in the questions.
Very great points. Thank you. Let's see, we have 1, 2, 3.
That I think that
Can you speak loud into the mic?
to capitalize upon MAGA's unhappiness with Trump, I mean, he's cutting a lot of entitlements, and a lot of that has impacted young, disenfranchised, struggling people who are mad that we're doing all these foreign interventions and we don't have health care and affordable housing here. Those issues you can coalesce among, and they connect with the anti-war issue without having to get into the other issues. A lot of the young people who maybe thought that Trump was going to fulfill his word and be the peace president are upset that he went back on his word. So you don't want to leave those people behind. Who are now very upset that their entitlements and everything's been cut.
Got Andy here.
Andy?
From an organizing perspective, we've had so many events around Gaza, some around Iran, anti-war stuff. We get tons of RSVPs, of people that RSVP to come to the events. Many of them don't come, but they give us their email address, which means they're interested in the conversation. We probably have close to 10,000 emails, at least, of people that have responded to events that we've done that would be of interest. Sending out something to those folks would be really, it's our email list, so we can do whatever we want with it, but sending out that information to folks like that would be, I think, a real specific ask so that they could do something. In addition, I think, and somebody mentioned during the rallies, people go out and rally and then they go home and forget about everything and nothing really happens because nobody sees it necessarily or hears it. Having maybe, I'm thinking during the Sunday morning cafes, having a letter writing or some component to it that you don't leave here unless you write a postcard or a letter or something like that. And I thought maybe if we could create postcards that we can have people sign off on the spot at rallies or at events or whatever we do, and then hand deliver them or whatever we do or to them, to the various members of Congress, I think might be really helpful and useful. I know that talking to members of Congress, that's what they respond to. They respond to voices, they respond numbers, they count the people that call, count the people that send letters. And I think that might be one way to sort of focus this stuff, because clearly most people are on the side of peace. Really, I mean, if you think about it and you go and take just a poll, but yet those voices are not the ones that are being heard for the people that make the decisions.
Wait, just to,
Does anybody know what the Veterans for Peace are doing? Have they put out stuff on social media? Because they're a very important group, and they're listened to, because they're both sides. They're Democrats, they're Republicans.
well, no, Veterans for Peace are Democrat. Or to the left of the Democrats. And no, but I think you bring up, in general, it's the veterans, and there's Veterans for Peace, and then there are other groups that are, like Common Defense is actually a bigger group, and there's a couple of other veterans groups, so we could look up and see what they're doing, but we know Veterans for Peace is already telling people to contact their members of Congress. The question really is, what are the things that we want people to do? Helen, you brought up that they should be calling in, and that really reinforces when we're in the halls. We need more people with us in Congress, especially this coming week before the vote on the War Powers Act. So any of you who can come and join us, this week we're going to be there Monday to Friday. We're going to be on the Senate side and the House side, and we need to get your friends, people who've said at some time, oh yes, I can come, now is the time to come. But at the same time that we're going to their office, we need the calls to be coming in so that they're reinforcing what we're saying. So that's why we need to get all of these organizations, and Andy, your list, all of them to be saying this week is an absolute critical week. This could be the difference between World War III or nuclear war, as Shlomo was saying, and stopping it now. So we need that kind of synergy. I'm also wondering, should we have some kind of more visible actions at the White House, and there will be groups at the White House, and in Congress, like we once had, did we do it like from sunup to sundown, right?
No, we actually did it all through the whole time. You mean the bombing of Syria?
Yeah.
We did it it was 24/7 for 10 days, man.
So we were outside of Congress 24/7 for 10 days around Stop Bombing of Syria. And it was at a time when the Tea Party was having their rallies, and they came and joined us, and we went with them into Congress. So raise your hand if you think it would be a good idea to have some kind of a permanent presence outside of Congress for the next week. All right, so we got a lot of people raising their hand here. And I think we could set up something pretty simple with some banners, and we could have shifts because it's going to be in the 90s. And if it gets too hot, we can bring it inside and be walking through the halls of Congress, which we have done at certain times, just to be a constant presence walking around the halls of Congress. We need to get a lot of shirts like this because, you know, you're not allowed to hold a sign, but you are allowed to have the shirts. So, yes.
This was Ralph Nader.
Yeah.
I said, what do you think we should do? Just in a second. And he said impeachment. He said get Jamie Raskin to start impeachment proceedings.
Well, AOC has already said that she is introducing impeachment. I mean, you know, they'll do that inside of Congress, but I just feel like we should not go that route, that we should not be down the partisan route, that we should recognize there's a lot of people who call themselves Republicans who want to end this war, and that you will alienate every single one of them with the impeachment route.
But this is not really, he's breaking laws. He's been breaking laws. So it's not a partisan issue, I think. If you just look at it as partisan, you're really kind of missing the point of this guy is...
Yeah, but you're not going to get one Republican to sign on to
partisan. I mean, there's no doubt.
And they're going to do it. They're already talking about it.
So many laws last time, you know, they couldn't impeach him because they didn't have the votes.
But also, I mean, we have a vote coming up. This is
Yeah.
a really important vote coming up on Thursday or Friday or sooner if, you know, Ro Khanna is saying come back sooner. But anyway, I think every little piece of energy should be on that for this week and reaching out to anyone else that we can to bring into our movement. And we should also not be focusing just on DC. DC people don't have a vote. So going to the edge of the suburbs, having signed a no war on Iran sign and flyers, or just a sign with a QR code where people can right then send the message to their congressperson and then get on a list of American Friends Service Committee or Code Pink or, NIAC. Just get them connected so that they will continue to, and also get their phone number so that you can connect with them and have them come back later. But it needs to be more than just what we've been doing.
Yeah.
I do totally agree with in front of Congress, but we also have to be doing outreach to these indivisible groups, to the No Kings groups.
Absolutely.
You don't need more than 3 people to stand at a metro or on an overpass or on a busy road or a pedestrian place like downtown Silver Spring Veterans Plaza.
Absolutely, that's great. So, Kate, do you still have relationship with the Move On folks? So could you contact them? And I can't remember, we know some, the indivisible folks you have as well. Okay, so that would be great. In terms of Congress itself, if we could, I don't think we have to do the overnight. I think if we did 8 in the morning till 6 at night, and people took 2-hour shifts, that would be enough to be there, to be outside of Congress with their signs.
Right across, where
they walk in and out.
Yeah, New Jersey and Independence, right there. New Jersey and Independence, right across the street from the Longworth building.
And given how hot it's going to be, 2 hours is plenty for somebody. So you're being a physical presence, so you could tell the media there will always be somebody out there to come talk to it and gauge the anti-war sentiment. That the Congress people will see us when they come in and out. All the visitors, of course, who are coming will see us when we go in and out.
You can't build stuff out there. So, we've done this before. So, explain how it really happened. We started a march. We wanted Barack Obama not to shoot on Syria. We got to Congress, and people started breaking off, and we as Code Pink sat down and took over the corner, and we were there for 10 days. Now, we had a massive banner out there, but they kept coming up with new rules and all the time. So it's not like you can build a construction thing there. It won't happen. But
we can try it. We can try anything.
That we can bring out there. The point is that at the time, the Tea Party there were lots of Tea Party people in town because they were strong at that time. Right now, there's lots of MAGA people in town. If you can get these disgruntled MAGAs that don't want to go to war, and they're on the street, and they're going across the street to go meet with their congressional representative, and they're going to say, oh yeah, and by the way,
And one thing we did that was very cool is we had them take out their phone right then and there and call, even though they were going to go in and meet with their representative, some of them, different things.
We had a whiteboard with the different representatives' names on them and the telephone numbers, and people would
of the ones that really needed to be pressured. So we could do something like that again. The other thing that Olivia's had us do, and we've only done it twice so far, is go early in the morning and keep walking around in that intersection, because they can't tell you it's illegal, because you're going when the light changes, and then when the light changes, and the light changes, with the big banners, and that has been really good as well. So we can incorporate that into it, because people are really seeing you as you're going around this major intersection. I think we have Olivia on the phone. Olivia, are you here? Yes. Do you want to make any suggestions?
Yeah, I'm just thinking for this week, with the War Powers resolution. Or big bold lettering, like we had that 30-foot stop arming Israel. We could have like a 30-foot stop bombing Iran one, but what are the main, what are we asking the Senate, like the Congress people when we're bird dogging them, and then how is the war resolution part of that as well, even though Trump already did escalated. Those are my two questions, I guess, then before going into like attack.
So has the green on. So I think the message is hands off Iran, no war with Iran, those two, right? And what was the other question? Oh, like what would you be saying to Congress people? Yeah.
Getting those answers for them, I think is important. We're compiling the list of their statements and everything. I think it's good. Yeah, so those are just like more micro things, like we're asking them directly. I think in terms of action today at the rally, I mean, I won't be there, but you're like asking people what they want to do outside of marching and protesting. Partially why obviously things on the weekend is because people work during the week, but we've had decentralized shutdowns of like large intersections to block traffic, those things that are just more kind of like overarching. I do think the crosswalk thing is good because it's right there, and if you want to use the 6 p.m. presence, it should be right there as well. I also agree that like a couple of people sometimes it's good to fire, but I also think there's power in numbers. So if there's a time where everyone can come, like if between 9 and 11 you can get 40 people doing that. I think that it's more impactful than just like 1 or 2 people with a small sign in Congress at least. So those are a couple of my thoughts.
Yeah, so if anybody didn't hear her, she said it's more impactful to have like 9 to 11 a.m. is the time you want to get a bunch of people to come, and I think that's a great idea. We could do it in addition to then having some people that are more of a permanent presence. The one thing I'm confused about is where somebody like Chuck Schumer is right now, because he's saying we need to support the War Powers Act, which he wasn't saying last week. But my fear is that somebody like him, it's all about process, and that if the War Powers Act passed, he would be in favor of Congress giving the green light for continued war. So when we talk to members of Congress, we have to ask them not just, are you going to vote in favor of the War Powers Act, but are you in favor of U.S. involvement in a continued war in Iran? Or should the U.S. be at war with Iran? Or what has Iran done to threaten us? Or, we can come up with a series of questions. But let's be careful on the War Powers Act, because it really is about process.
I just want to, I'm curious if anybody knows. I mean, since the No Kings had 1,000 rallies a week ago. So there's an existing some sort of structure and up-to-date contacts and all of that sort of thing. Does anybody know who was sort of part of the group that organized nationally so that they and would be persuasive with them to put out the word to...
The Democratic Party.
It is.
I mean, but they're not going to go along with it. It's the Democrats.
It's the Women's March, and we can talk to the Women's March, and Kate can talk to Indivisible and move on. I know, you're absolutely right. They have the ability to mobilize, and this is, I know, but at this,
Taking all the money, all everything to support this stuff.
yeah, but we need people.
In my community,
Yeah.
Hyattsburg, the indivisible group said they would gladly support what we're asking them to do.
Excellent.
We would be certainly behind this. I'm reaching out to the leadership team.
Excellent, yeah,
It's a decentralized movement.
yeah.
Who knows indivisible chapters? I would say reach out to local chapters.
So maybe we should start to sum up now, because I think we're losing some people, and we've been here for 2 hours. I'll just try to remember some of the things that we said. What?
I have a question. Did we, so are we committing to being on the corner of Independence?
Okay, I'll come up with that.
Oh,
Okay. All right, so one is we're going to put out a list of what we think is good sources of information. Anybody want to raise your hand to volunteer to come up with that list? I mean, we have most of it already in the notes here, but, yeah. The Quincy Institute. So some of these are organizations, and some of them have their own news sites. Okay, and then we're also going to put out a list of organizations that, one, we know are good and already doing work. We have, I think, that list that we've talked about. But the other is the brainstorming we did of who we want to get on board to be part of this movement. And those are, we went through a whole grouping of ones from labor movements to black organizations to environmental groups, and the veterans groups. Excellent. Then we talked about wanting those big groups to call for decentralized actions in their communities, particularly at the offices of their congresspeople and their senators, to push them now for the War Powers Resolution. Right? That's the immediate. And to get all of their people to be making calls, and all of our groups to be pushing to making calls. And we'll put the script together, we'll put it out, but, each group obviously comes up with their own, and there's some groups that have already come out with a number to be able to tally how many people are making the calls. And there's calls to the White House, and the White House hotline is ridiculously not open 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. It is ridiculously only open from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Monday to Thursday. Monday to Thursday, not even Friday. But we do have to flood the White House with calls. You can't even leave it anymore. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So,
But on the other hand, reaching somebody to talk to in Congress is fairly
easy. Yeah.
At least 50% of the time, you can actually get through to a person.
Right.
Which tells me that there's not as many phone calls as you think there are, because there's only how many phones they have, 3 or 4?
And I also want to say that last week, we heard that there were a lot of members of AIPAC making calls, and they were getting like 100 calls in each office. So we got to up our game and make a lot more calls. The letter writing is a good thing. We should do it wherever we are. I mean, if we had them, we could do it at the WPFW thing this afternoon, but wherever we are, it is good to get people to hand write. And for those groups, the indivisible groups and the move-ons, if they are getting their organizations locally to write letters, we can hand deliver them in Congress as well, and that is impactful to do. And where? It's the community radio station. WPFW, say, yeah. They're having a all-day jazz and something festival. Jazz and Justice in Malcolm X Park today. Then we talked about upping the ante in Congress. So having, I don't know, we'll talk to Olivia whether we should just have it be a specific day of the week that we try to mobilize number of people to come between 9 and 11, but that we try to see, this is outside Congress, and see if we can pull off having a presence in Congress, at least a small number of people, if that's all we can get, on a daily basis. Outside Congress, outside Congress. And then inside Congress, we want to contact a bunch of these organizations, like we just talked to a bunch of the interns at ADC, the Arab American, what's ADC? Anti-Discrimination Committee. They said they'd send their interns to be with us this week. A lot of groups have summer interns. We can call them and see if they could join us. So whatever groups that you're part of, if you could call them and say, can you spare a couple of people one day this week to go around with us in Congress? And we have our great Ahmed here who will be giving us the lists that we need to go in both the House side and the Senate side. So we'll have outside Congress, inside Congress. We'll talk to the groups that are organizing the White House rally at 2 o'clock and ask them what their plans are for getting bigger rallies. How can are we really going to plan for a day when they're busing people in, when they're doing some of those big rallies that we did around Gaza early on? Wait 1 second, what? They already have an opportunity to register where? On that website. What website? The website for the March today, answer.org. Oh, is that what you're saying, Olivia? It's a national... They have it where you register your own. Okay. Yeah. Right. Sure. And Olivia, you said there's a national day?
Yeah, on the 26th.
26th is a national day of action on Iran.
Yes.
Okay, anything else before we wrap up? I heard that in Ilhan Omar's office, but we can check on Monday. Yeah, but then they said the parliamentarians said that they didn't count the days right, and so it had to be Friday, but we'll check tomorrow. Is the 26th the big, everybody day? Yeah, it's Thursday. Why are they doing it Thursday? That's going to be too late, but if the vote's Friday, that's great. Yeah. Yeah, if you have any more recommendations, come up and tell Ahmed before we close up. Lola.
We talked about reaching out to our organizations or individuals to join. Are we going to do that individually ourselves, or is it a message by Code B?
No, I think everybody go to organizations they have contact with yourself. Yeah. I mean, we also should maybe start asking. It would be good to have a real coalition. Andy, you brought together some groups before. Maybe you could convene again the heads of organizations so we could be more coordinated. Around Iran, yeah. Oh, and Lola, maybe you could also help us to get a list of maybe 10 Iranian Americans who you think people should follow. That would be great. Anything else? Going once, going twice? Yeah.
Are we going to have any specific talking points in writing about organizations, or just whatever we think it's influential?
Well, we have already talking points. A number of organizations, as of yesterday, have put them out. Code Pink did, NIAC did. So we can look afterwards and see what's best, and we can add them into these notes. Now, if you want to get the notes, how do they do that? But how do you know who to share it with? So if anybody wants to get the notes afterwards, give your email to Ahmed after.
And remember, it's on YouTube.
And it's on YouTube.
And you can also, it's on the Bus Boys of Poets now. Bus Boys of Poets now.
Oh.
I think that this, well, is YouTube, I guess it's public, yeah. This is probably not something they see on public.
Well, I think at this point, looking back, there's nothing we're worried about.
We're not going to blast it out.
Yeah.
You have to go look at it.
Okay, I'll put it on there.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you, and, yeah.
On the convening part of the groups, we need to have a focal person who can like be the main focus for the event. Would Leila be?
Well, we could talk afterwards, maybe, about that. Yeah, yeah.
Some sort of focus.
Okay. Great, thank you, Andy, for convening us, yeah?
Next week, remind people.
What are we gonna have next week? Oh, next week we have Megan. Yay! Yeah? You won't be here. Next week we will not have Megan, but we will have something. The week after? All right, so we will program Megan in. Yeah, Jan. Yeah. How do we get t-shirts? Good question. Olivia, can you get t-shirts made up? We might have lost her, but we will ask. Yes?
Yeah, I can check with JP about it.
Okay, great. All right, thank you, Andy. Thank you, everybody. Let's go stop the war. 2 o'clock, White House.
And PFW at noon.